Hello, bonjour, hola, ni hao. Welcome to Polyglot Easy Pod. Simple words, global vibes, your world starts here.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because when I first saw the stack of papers you put on my desk for this week, I have to be honest, I did a double take. Usually we are here tearing apart, quarterly earnings reports or looking at the geopolitical implications of semiconductor manufacturing or diving into deep neuroscience papers.
Right, the heavy stuff.
The heavy stuff. But today, you've handed me the script for what looks like a beginner's English lesson.
It does seem like a sharp left turn, doesn't it?
A very sharp left turn. I mean, the title is English Horizon, Episode 1.
Right.
And just glancing through it, it's clearly designed for people learning English as a second language. We're talking, what, pre-intermediate level?
Yeah, A2B1, that's the target audience they mentioned in the source material. Simple sentences, clear articulation, upbeat acoustic music in the background, all of that.
So my first question, before we even get into the weeds here, is why? Why should our listeners, who are, presumably fluent in English if they're listening to us, care about a script designed for A2 learners? What are we doing here?
That is absolutely the right question to start with. And frankly, if this were just a list of vocabulary words and grammar rules, we wouldn't be here. I wouldn't waste your time with it.
Okay.
But once I started really analyzing the source text, specifically the scripts for this debut episode, hosted by two characters named Leo and Sarah, I realized something.
What's that?
This isn't really a lesson about English.
No.
No. It's a masterclass in the psychology of learning. It's a case study in vulnerability. And more than that, it offers a philosophical framework for how to tackle any difficult new project.
Any project.
Whether that's learning a language, starting a business, learning to play an instrument, anything that feels overwhelming.
Okay, so you're saying we're looking at the meta layer of the script, not the vocabulary itself, but the strategy behind it.
Exactly. We're looking at the mission of the show, which is explicitly stated in the text. Leo and Sarah, they say they want to move beyond the mechanical parts of the language.
The irregular verbs, the conjugation tables.
Right. All the stuff that made you hate language class in high school. They want to move beyond that and find the soul of the language.
The soul of the language. I did circle that phrase. That's pretty ambitious for a first episode.
It is. And to do that, they have to dismantle the traditional teacher-student hierarchy. And that is where it gets really interesting for us.
How so?
Because usually when you step into a learning environment, the teacher is the expert. They are the authority. They're unshakable.
Right. They're at the front of the room. They have all the answers.
But look at the very first few lines of the script in part 1. What does Leo do?
It's shockingly honest. He starts the show, the on-air light turns red, and he immediately confesses, my hands are actually shaking a little bit.
Right. Not something you expect to hear.
No. He's the host. He's supposed to be the guy in charge. He talks about having first-day nerves, and then his co-host, Sarah, jumps in and says she has butterflies dancing in her stomach.
Let's just pause on that for a second. From a pedagogical standpoint, or even, a leadership standpoint, that is a risky move.
It feels risky. I mean, my first thought was, if I'm a student and my pilot comes over the intercom and says, folks, my hands are shaking, I'm getting off the plane.
Of course.
I want my pilot to be confident. I want my teacher to know what they're doing. Doesn't this undermine their authority right out of the gate?
That's the instinctive reaction, I think. We think we want the guru. We want the person on the mountaintop who is perfect and has it all figured out. But in the context of language learning or any high anxiety activity, perfection creates distance. If the teacher is perfect, then my mistakes as a student feel like failures.
Ah, I see what you're saying. So if the teacher is flawless, the gap between me, the struggling student, and them, it feels unbridgeable.
Precisely. By admitting he is nervous about hosting, Leo levels the playing field. He is telling the listener, look, I am a beginner at this podcast thing, just like you are a beginner at English.
It's an empathy bridge.
It is. It creates what we call psychological safety.
Psychological safety. We hear that term a lot in corporate management these days.
We do, because it matters everywhere. If your cortisol levels are high because you're terrified of looking stupid, the learning centers of your brain literally shut down.
You go into fight or flight.
Exactly. You cannot absorb information in a state of high threat. So Leo and Sarah are trying to lower the threat level in the first 60 seconds They're saying, we're in this together.
So it's the we're in the trenches approach versus the ivory tower approach.
Exactly. And honestly, it just makes them more likable. We trust people who admit their flaws. It's just human nature.
Speaking of flaws, the script goes into a surprising amount of detail about who these people are. They aren't just disembodied voices. The source material gives us these really specific, almost quirky character profiles, and I want to dig into Leo first because I found his profile just hilarious.
Leo's great. He's painted as this nature lover, right? This guy who loves green things.
Yeah, he describes his apartment as being filled with green. He says he's obsessed with indoor plants. But then, and this is the part where I actually laughed out loud reading the script, he admits he is a terrible gardener.
The hospital for plants.
Yes. He calls his living room the hospital for plants. He tells this anecdote about a fern that has been dying for 3 years, but he refuses to give up on it.
He's still watering it every day.
He is. And then he mentions he plays the guitar, but he's been playing for 10 years and only knows 3 chords.
Now, why do you think the writers included those specific details? It's not just for a cheap laugh. There's a deeper point there.
Well, again, it makes him relatable for sure. But I feel like there's something deeper about the way he engages with these hobbies. It's not about winning.
There is. Leo represents a philosophy that I like to call imperfect joy.
Imperfect joy. Say more about that.
Think about it. We live in a world that is completely obsessed with optimization and mastery. If you start a hobby, the assumption is you are trying to get good at it.
Right. You track your metrics. You get a coach.
You take up running to run a marathon. You take up guitar to play in a band. But Leo has been playing the same 3 chords for a decade. And does he sound unhappy about it?
No, actually. The script says he loves the sound. He loves the process. He loves making his coffee in the morning, checking on his dying leaves. He seems perfectly content with his mediocrity, I guess.
That is the radical idea. He completely decouples competence from enjoyment. He is modeling for the learner that you don't have to be fluent in English to enjoy the process of learning it.
So you don't have to be a master gardener to enjoy having plants around.
You can just enjoy the act itself.
That is actually really difficult for me to wrap my head around. I'm a very goal-oriented person. If I'm doing something poorly for 10 years, I feel like I've failed.
And that is exactly why you and many of our listeners would struggle with the plateau phase of learning, which we'll get to later. But Leo is showing us that if you detach your ego from the result, you can sustain the habit forever. He's not quitting the guitar because he's bad at it. He's playing it because he likes it, full stop.
It's the difference between doing something for the outcome versus doing it for the pure experience.
Correct. Now, you need a counterweight to that, though.
Yeah.
If everyone were just Zen like Leo, nothing would ever get done, right?
Right.
That's where Sarah comes in.
Sarah, the city girl.
She's the energy. She loves the noise, the street food smells, the subway sounds. She mentions living in London and Tokyo. She's the adventurer. She's the one who pushes things forward.
But even the adventurer gets humbled. And this brings us to what I think is the emotional anchor of the entire first episode. I'm calling it the croissant story.
Oh, this is such a pivotal moment in the text. It's a perfect little narrative.
So let's set the scene for the listener, because I think everyone, and I mean everyone, has had a version of this happen to them at some point. Sarah is in France. It's her first month living there. She has studied French for years in school. She knows the grammar. She knows the vocabulary. She feels prepared.
She has what I call classroom confidence. It's a dangerous illusion.
Right, because it's sterile. It's not the real world. So she walks into a bakery, a boulangerie. She wants 1 croissant. A simple transaction.
The simplest.
She has the sentence rehearsed in her head. She's probably said it 100 times to herself. She steps up to the counter, opens her mouth, and the baker doesn't understand her.
The absolute nightmare scenario for any language learner.
The script says he looked confused, and then he looked annoyed. And Sarah says she turned red and felt like a total failure. She wanted to just run away.
Let's just analyze the sociology of this interaction for a moment, because it's not just about bread. It's about status.
Status. Go on.
In that moment, in Sarah's mind, the baker is high status. He is the judge. He is the gatekeeper of both croissants and French culture. He holds the power.
And Sarah puts herself in the low status position.
She is the defendant. She is the petitioner. That is where the anxiety comes from. It's not the words, it's the perceived judgment.
She feels small. She feels like she's failing a test.
Exactly. But then, in that moment of wanting to flee, she has this epiphany. And this is the line in the script that really struck me. She realizes, he's just a man selling bread. I'm just a girl who's hungry.
I loved that line. It's so simple and so profound.
It's a massive reframing. She flattens the hierarchy. She strips away the judge-defendant dynamic and replaces it with seller-buyer.
Or just human-human.
Just two humans. One has a need, the other has a solution.
So once she realizes that, the fear just evaporates. The script says she pointed, she laughed at herself, and she communicated imperfectly.
And she got the croissant.
Which is the only metric that actually matters in that situation.
Exactly. This illustrates the core theme of the entire show. Connection over perfection. The goal of language isn't to produce a grammatically perfect sentence that could be printed in a textbook. The goal is to transfer an idea, or in this case, a desire for a pastry from one brain to another.
But that's so hard to remember in the moment. When you're standing there and the person looks annoyed, your instinct is to apologize and retreat and feel like an idiot.
Which is why the hosts emphasize this concept of the judgment-free zone. They promise that on this show, they don't care about missing ensigns or the thick accents. They are trying to deprogram that shame response that Sarah felt in the bakery.
It's interesting because in the corporate world, or even just on social media, we are rarely in a judgment-free zone. We are constantly being evaluated, judged, rated. So creating that space is actually a really distinct, almost rebellious act.
It is. It's a sanctuary.
Yeah.
And you need a sanctuary if you're going to be vulnerable enough to learn anything new.
So we've established the philosophy imperfect joy and connection over perfection. But the source material also dives into the practical psychology of how we learn. They call it the New Start mindset.
Right.
And this section, man, this section called me out personally.
Which part? The perfect time trap.
The perfect time trap. I am the king of this. I'll start learning Spanish when this big project is over. I'll get back to the gym after the holidays. I'll read that book when work calms down.
And tell me, does work ever calm down?
Never. Not once in 10 years has it calmed down.
That is exactly Leo's point in the script. He introduces this Tetris analogy, which I think is just brilliant. He says, adult life is like the game Tetris.
Can we just geek out on this analogy for a minute? Because it is so accurate, it hurts.
Please, it's perfect.
In Tetris, you work really hard, you line up the blocks perfectly, you clear a line, and what happens?
A moment of relief, and then 3 more blocks fall. Faster this time.
The board never clears, it never gets empty.
And yet we live with this psychologists call it the arrival fallacy, that there is a clear board waiting for us in the future. We think, once I get past this week, the blocks will stop falling.
But the blocks never stop falling.
Not until the game is over.
That's a bleak way to put it. Until the game is over.
Well, it's true, isn't it? As long as you are alive and active, there will be demands on your time. There will be blocks falling. So Leo argues that if you wait for the empty space, you will wait forever.
So what's the alternative? The script says, start in the middle of the mess.
Start in the middle of the mess. It's a call to integrate learning into the chaos of your life, rather than trying to curate a sterile, perfect environment for it.
You don't need the mahogany desk and the total silence and the perfectly sharpened pencils and the new notebook. You can do it while the kids are screaming or the microwave is counting down.
Which leads us directly to the tactical solution Sarah proposes. The 5-minute rule.
Okay, let's break this down, because I've heard variations of this before, like the Pomodoro technique, but Sarah's version is a little different, a little more forgiving.
It's specifically designed to combat overwhelm. When the idea of a 30-minute lesson feels impossible, the rule is this. You promise yourself you will do the activity for only 5 minutes.
And the crucial part, the part that makes it work, is the permission, right?
Yes. You must genuinely give yourself permission to quit after 5 minutes. It can't be a trick where you know you're lying to yourself. You have to be allowed to walk away guilt-free.
But the trick, or I guess the psychological reality, is that you usually don't walk away.
Correct. This is just basic physics applied to psychology. It's Newton's first law. An object at rest tends to stay at rest. An object in motion tends to stay in motion.
And the hardest part of any task is the activation energy required to just start.
It's the friction of opening the book or lacing up your running shoes or opening the blank document.
I feel this every single morning. The walk from my bed to the coffee machine is the hardest journey of the day.
Exactly. But once you are up, once the book is open, the friction is gone. Momentum takes over. You're already there, so you usually keep going.
But let's play devil's advocate here for a second. Let's say I do the 5 minutes and I actually quit. I really just do 5 minutes and I stop. Have I actually accomplished anything meaningful? Can you really learn a language in 5-minute increments? That seems insufficient.
Well, if you look at it purely from a data accumulation standpoint, maybe not much. You learn 2 new words, Great. But from an identity standpoint, you accomplished everything.
Identity standpoint, what do you mean by that?
Sarah mentions building confidence capital. There's a writer, James Clear, who talks about this in his book, Atomic Habits. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, no matter how small, you cast a vote for the type of person you want to be. If you do 5 minutes of English every day, you're casting a vote for the identity. I'm a person who studies English.
And that identity is what keeps you going when things get tough, when you don't feel motivated.
Exactly. Consistency beats intensity every single time. It is far better to do 5 minutes a day for a year than to do a 5-hour cram session once a month and then burn out completely.
Speaking of burning out, the script transitions from starting to sustaining, and they address the thing that kills, what they say, 90% of learning journeys, the plateau.
The dreaded plateau.
They define it as the flat road after a steep climb. You've been working hard, you've been seeing progress maybe for weeks or months, and suddenly, nothing. You're stuck.
And this is the danger zone. This is where the vast majority of people quit, because we are conditioned to expect linear progress. Input equals output. If I work for an hour, I should get better by 1 unit.
But learning doesn't work that way.
Not at all. Leo brings back the guitar analogy here. He talks about his fingers just not moving any faster. He's practicing, but the song sounds exactly the same as it did last week. It's incredibly frustrating.
It is. But the source material offers a really comforting theory here. They call it the digesting theory.
I like this. Break it down for us.
The idea is that a plateau isn't a dead end. It's not a sign that you've reached your limit. It's a construction site.
When you stop seeing visible external progress, it's because your brain is busy working internally. It's consolidating the massive amount of information you've just fed it. It's building the foundation.
So it's like when you eat a huge meal, you stop eating. To an outside observer, you're doing nothing. But inside, your body is working overtime to digest all those nutrients and turn them into energy.
That's a perfect analogy. Or think about weightlifting. You don't build muscle while you're lifting the weight. You tear the muscle. You build the muscle while you're resting after the lift. The plateau is the rest period where the real growth actually happens, under the surface.
So if you quit during a plateau, you're basically walking out of the gym before the muscle has a chance to repair and grow. You're robbing yourself of the gains.
Precisely. You are interrupting the consolidation process. You did all the hard work, and now you're leaving before the payoff.
But it's still boring. Knowing that theory is nice, but it doesn't change the fact that I'm bored and frustrated and I feel stuck. So what does the script suggest we do?
Sarah has a very practical suggestion. Don't throw the guitar out the window. Just change the input.
I think the line was, stop studying and start living.
Yes. If the textbook is boring you, put it away. Stop drilling grammar exercises. Go watch a silly cartoon in English. Listen to a true crime podcast. Read a comic book. Find a community online.
It's about keeping the connection to the language alive without the pressure of improvement.
It's the garden metaphor Sarah uses. She says you can't pull on your plants to make them grow faster.
Yeah.
You can stand there and scream at your fern, but it won't grow.
Believe me, I've tried.
You just have to provide water and light, and you have to wait. You have to trust the biology of learning.
I think that requires a level of patience that the modern world is beaten out of us. We want one-click shipping on our skills.
We do, but nature doesn't work on Amazon Prime Time.
Okay, so we've covered the philosophy, the characters, the psychology of starting and sticking with it. Now, I want to get into the weeds of the language itself. Because the third part of the source material is called the word tour.
And this is where the rubber meets the road, pedagogically speaking.
Now, usually vocabulary lists are the most boring part of any lesson, just a list of words and definitions. But what struck me here is that they didn't just pick random words like apple or table.
No.
They chose words that tell the story of the episode itself. They're meta words.
They are. And the way they analyze them goes beyond simple definitions. They look at usage, nuance, context. They explore how the words actually live in real sentences.
Let's dive into a few of these because I think there's a lot of richness here, even for native speakers. The first word is nervous.
Simple enough, right? But they make a very specific distinction. They contrast nervous with angry.
Is that a common point of confusion for learners?
It can be. In many cultures and languages, high arousal states can get grouped together. Or, more commonly, someone who is nervous might act short-tempered or irritable.
Right, so you look at someone who is snapping at people, you might think they are angry, but Leo and Sarah are peeling back the layer to say, no, look for the fear, look for the anxiety.
Nervous is about anxiety. It's the butterflies in your stomach.
And they highlight the grammar, too, which I thought was useful. You are nervous about something. It's directional.
Right. I am nervous about the presentation. It structures the emotion, gives it an object. It's not just a free-floating feeling.
The next word they tackle is mission. Now, we use this in business all the time, mission statement. But they define it as something stronger than a goal.
Yeah, a goal is, I want to finish this report by Friday. A mission implies a calling. It implies a deeper purpose, a passion.
It feels almost religious or military in its intensity.
It does. It raises the stakes. By saying the podcast has a mission to find the soul of the language, they are elevating it from a simple hobby to crusade.
And for a learner, I guess adopting a mission mindset could be really powerful.
Incredibly. My mission is to connect with my grandmother in her native tongue. That's very different from my goal is to pass the TOEFL exam.
That's a great distinction. Mission-driven learning versus curriculum-driven learning. One has its own fuel source, the other just has checklists.
It's exactly.
Next, we have the phrase judgment-free zone. We talked about this conceptually, but as a piece of vocabulary, it's really useful.
It's a compound noun that acts as a boundary-setting tool. If you can say to someone, hey, this is a judgment-free zone, you are explicitly setting the rules of engagement. It's a powerful linguistic tool for creating social safety.
Then we have language barrier. I've always found this image really evocative.
It is. It's a very physical metaphor, a wall or a barrier that stops movement and connection.
And the verbs we use with it are always aggressive. We break the barrier, we overcome it, we smash through it.
It frames language learning as a battle, a siege you have to lay.
Do you think that's a helpful framing?
I think it validates the struggle. When you can't understand someone, it really does feel like walking into a glass wall. You can see them on the other side, but you can't touch them. Acknowledging that the wall is real helps you mobilize the energy to start climbing over it.
And speaking of climbing, the next word is plateau.
Which they make a point to note is a French origin plan, TOH, a flat table.
It's interesting that they teach this word to beginners. Why teach the word plateau in the very first episode?
It's what we call metacognition. Thinking about thinking. By giving the learner the word plateau, they're giving them a diagnostic tool for their own future suffering.
So in 3 months, when the learner is stuck and frustrated, they can say, this isn't me. I am on a plateau.
Exactly. Naming the demon makes it less scary. Instead of saying, I am stupid or I am failing, they can say, I am experiencing a known, predictable phenomenon called a plateau. It objectifies the problem and separates it from their identity.
That is just incredibly smart curriculum design. You're arming them for the tough times ahead right from day one.
You are. It's preventative medicine.
Finally, they end the tour with an idiom. The ball is in your court.
Originating from tennis, obviously.
It means it is your turn to act or to make a decision.
It's about the transfer of responsibility. In a conversation, or in any relationship, there is a back and forth. If I ask you a question, I have hit the ball to you. If you don't answer, the game stops.
The example they give is about relationships. They say, after apologizing, the ball is in the other person's court to forgive.
It's a great example of agency and its limits. You can only do your part. Once you've hit the ball, you have to let go of the outcome. You can't run over and play the other person's side of the court for them.
Which transitions perfectly into how they wrap up the entire episode. Because after explaining that the ball is in the listener's court, they literally put the ball in the listener's court.
They do. They pivot from lecture to community building.
They ask the listeners to comment on where they are. A crowded bus in Seoul, a park in Madrid.
This is a powerful attempt to build a global classroom. And it directly tackles one of the biggest problems in self-study, isolation.
Right. Learning a language from an app or a podcast can be incredibly lonely. You're just sitting in your room talking to yourself, feeling like you're the only one.
But if you visualize that you are listening alongside a guy in Seoul and a woman in Madrid and someone else in Buenos Aires, suddenly you are part of a cohort. You are part of a movement.
And that social connection, even if it's virtual, helps with retention.
It's huge for retention.
And they give homework. But it's not fill-in-the-blank busy work.
No, they call it fun homework. They ask listeners to pick just one word from the tour like nervous or mission or plateau and write a single sentence about their own life using it.
Tell us about a time you broke the language barrier, or what is your mission?
It forces active recall. You aren't just passively letting the audio wash over you. You have to stop, think about your own life, select a word, and construct a sentence. That is where the neural pathways are actually formed.
It bridges the gap between passive consumption and active creation.
That's it exactly.
And then as the episode ends, there's this lovely narrative arc closure. Leo comes back on the mic.
And he has a realization. His hands aren't shaking anymore.
The start and the mess theory worked on him in real time. He started terrified, he did the thing anyway, and the fear went away.
Action cures fear. The only thing that does. You can't think your way out of fear. You have to work your way out.
And then they teased the next episode, the vocabulary secret, remembering words without a dictionary, which frankly sounds a little like clickbait, but I'm into it.
It's a good hook. It leaves you wanting more.
So we've walked through the script, we've analyzed the characters, the psychology, the vocabulary, but I want to zoom out one last time. Why does this matter? Why did we spend an hour dissecting a beginner English podcast?
Because fundamentally, this isn't about English. It's about the human condition of being a beginner.
Being a beginner.
Think about it. We hate being beginners, especially as adults. We're expected to be experts. We want to be competent immediately. Being a beginner feels vulnerable. It feels messy. It feels like the hospital for plants.
I feel like standing in a French bakery turning bright red because a man is annoyed with you.
Exactly. But what Leo and Sarah are arguing in this script is that vulnerability isn't a bug, it's a feature. They're arguing that the soul of the language, or maybe the soul of life, is found in those messy, imperfect moments of connection.
It's that imperfect joy concept again. It's validating that doing something badly is infinitely better than not doing it at all.
Precisely. Perfectionism is the enemy of progress. If Sarah had waited until her French was perfect, she would have starved.
Right.
She had to be willing to be a fool to get the bread.
And in doing so, she connected with another human being, even if it was clumsy.
And that's the real payoff.
Yeah.
Not the perfect sentence, but the croissant, the connection.
So here's our final thought for you, the listener. The source material ends with a line that I think we should all, tattoo on our foreheads. You don't have to be perfect, you just have to be here.
It's a powerful mantra. You just have to be here.